So, good evening. I want to start with one of my poems here, which I'd like tonight. I have three things. Want to talk about clarity and ease and spaciousness, those three, which is really, again, this thing of body, heart, and mind. A long lineage. Looking into the hidden landscape of our underground world, talking endlessly about our own nothingness, of course, going nowhere. Remembering this lineage asking us to simply stay in our seat. No longer sneaking out the window, hoping that it would turn out better, only to remind ourselves the only small triumph here is staying in our seat. The great yogis of old surrendered to this great world, never giving up their seat, breaking the bonds of their storytelling, free at last. So that the breaking of the bonds of the storyteller, which is really the self and its constant mirroring itself in all things. And unfortunately, it can just go on and on, an endless array. So when I say clarity and ease and spaciousness, I would like to start with the ease, because I think the ease is simply where these teachings ground themselves, different than maybe other teachings, because these teachings are based on our ability to ground our awareness with what's here. And so the functioning of that awareness is based on a body that, in many ways, this body is a gift that you have been given for a certain period of time. We don't know how long, but I hope it's long. And that it has certain universal distinctions. And it really goes back to these sense doors. And that somehow we have to learn to train that awareness in noting the world of the senses. And so when we see or smell or taste or hear or think, there's always the interesting phenomena that there's always, these are all body reactions. And therefore, in many ways, we are training ourselves to be in the body, to know the function, which is the sense doors, the seeing, the smelling, the hearing, the tasting, and our ability to not proliferate the experience of what's going on. So we're not trying to categorize the experiences. We're just simply noting the experiences. And a lot of this practice, one of the Mahasi Sayadaw's system was to be able to note, oh, that was a sound, that's a smell, that's a taste, that's a thought, that's a memory, that's a fantasy, and so in each case, there is the knowing of what it is that's happening, and that's really it's a great art to be able to know what's happening. And what happens a lot of times is, first of all, there is this huge thing of just not being aware. And so we just walk around sort of in a dream state that, that is not necessary uh, or not necessarily helpful for awakening. Awakening is in some ways uh, fairly simple because it means that the mind uh, is occupied with knowing what is happening. So you may say, "Oh, I see that," but in seeing, there is two aspects to it. One of them is that you see, and the other is that there is sight. And sight has no, it has no entrapments. So we just simply note sight, seeing. But usually what happens is when we see something, we identify with it, we like it or we dislike it, and we name it, you know, and that's how we operate. And so this is just a means of taking the identification out of it and just sticking with the simple fact of what is being experienced. And this is really, Vipassana practice is based on the ability to, I think more than anything, it's seeing into the subtle. I like that translation of it. But it also is the ability to name and know things, you know. And eventually there is, if you get good at this, one of the lovely aspects of it is when there's truly a continuity of the awareness to the objects of awareness, the seeing, the smelling, the tasting, the hearing, that then one is freed from the uh, individual concepts that come from it, you know. So there's just, it's, they talk about it sometimes as bare attention. It's just the ability to know what's happening and to attend to it without, philosophizing or, creating a story or identity around it. So a lot of the actual practice itself is just simply the naming. You could just say, oh, seeing, tasting, hearing, smelling, feeling, thinking. These are all ways um, of not getting caught in the object of awareness uh, and not telling story about the object of awareness. The mind is such a, in some ways it's a lovely thing because it is able to uh, create story and identification, and is there in many ways to protect the person so that they can have more pleasant sensations than unpleasant sensations. Okay, so that's kind of the bare bones of it. But the art here, the art of the, in a way, it's yes, it's disidentification, but it's done in a way that's soft. So you're actually looking for what's behind the initial experience. What is it that's behind it? You know, and I love that. Ajahn Chah. He has that line of the only book worth reading is your heart. And I think it's a huge statement, is somehow that we have to be able to kind of turn away from the world of sensation and objects and our views and opinions and our liking and our disliking of things, and see the bare experience of it. And if we begin to see the bare experience of it, then there's actually um, a relaxing that happens with all the sense doors um, and the system. And it's so funny because we're basically, as human beings, we're fearful creatures, and we're looking for things to be afraid of, to keep the organism or family or culture safe. And I feel so much for cultures that they can't get past that. But here we are privileged people that can actually uh, break some of those bonds because we're not caught up in um, the game of more of this, more of that, and begin to see that we can curtail that somewhat and not be lost in the sometimes I can say the amazement of what comes at us, but also what comes at us may be something we want, but it may be something we don't want. And so, in some ways, by learning um, to, in a sense, give space, or I always think it's important to see if we can't give something space. And in that space, there's a disidentifying, and then there is a kind of maybe wider experience or view of it, and that suddenly is not so much about the fear, but it's more about the understanding. um, you know and I'll use this as a term I use, is not that there's the separateness is the delusion. And so the separateness is that creates the fear, and that fear then uh, dominates uh, our uh, our our intelligence, you know, because one can be connective and love and non-separateness, and the other is fear and creating the protections for separateness. So I wanted to, in this piece tonight about first, there are two things I want to talk about. One is the body, and I think the body is, to me, one of the great gifts to this practice. And if you um, if you can learn to use it properly, because it contains our whole world. And because it contains our whole world, it's a place where we can, we can turn inward and get lost, or we can turn outward and get lost. And really, the Buddha talked about this as the middle way, where we were aware of the outside and the inside at the same time, which is, to me, this is the art of this practice, is being able to have the ability to know what's happening on the outside without getting lost in the storytelling, and connecting to the inside that is actually giving us permission to recognize you could say the what the big or the large view, and the other is more limited view. And so we have to play with this in the sense of the internal and the external. And, sometimes you have to put more attention on the external, and it's a right thing to do. Um, and other times we have the wherewithal to be able to uh, know and feel what's going on inside at the same time that we're experiencing the world and its beauty and its sometimes it's chaos. You know, yesterday I was standing by the window there, and I've in the last year or so, there's this gray fox that came, and yesterday it was so cute. They were two of them together, and they were gray foxes, big tails, and absolutely gorgeous. They were both fairly young, so they still looked pretty robust, you know. And so, when I saw them, I noted that, oh, and there was part of me that was attached to observing them. And there was another part that was like, oh, I hope they're okay. And it's that thing of having the external world and internal be there at the same time, you know. And you know, I guess I could have run outside or something, but or take a picture. That's the other thing we do, Oh, I'll take a picture or record it or something, you know. And not that I have anything against that, but I think, my years in when I first lived in India, and then I don't know, because I was there many years. Um, Nobody had cameras, and so there's not many pictures from those days. And the other thing, it was a distraction, you know. It was well, I'll just freeze this moment and then I can have it for later, which I have nothing against because I love to look back at pictures of that I've taken. But I also am aware that there were years there when there was never even a thought about it. It was not something that was. Um, it was not going to enhance my world. You actually being in nature was what enhanced my world, and not the recording or still photograph of it. And I respect people, who that go out of their way to, get pictures of foxes or, mountain lions or whatever. And but there's also, you know, can you be with that and do that without needing to distract yourself and then kind of in anything you can become obsessive. And what I like is that if you actually attend to the body, um, if you get obsessive about it, guess what? The thing's going to break down. You're going to get sick. You're going to break something. It is it's not necessarily the most pleasant thing, but it is what we have, and we can learn in some ways that with that awareness or consciousness, if you want to use the language of that we are conscious of what's happening, and yet we are not lost, and we're not caught by the emotions of because emotions are simple. One side is I'm attached to it, and the other one is I'm afraid of it. And this practice is based on I can monitor, when fear arises. I use the body because I can go. For me, it's always been when fear arises, I go to my belly. I know some people, they go to their heart. Some people, go to their shoulders. There's different responses to emotional stress. And one of the dangers in this culture, I think, has been the perpetuating of um, it's really titrating fear into our stress into our experience. And if you do that long enough, it it really changes the chemistry of the body and the reactions emotionally of the attachment and the fear. And I think attachment and fear are, they are kind of okay. They are part of our experience, you know, and uh, and yet at the same time, the consequences of those. And so, in some ways, people come to this practice essentially because they have, either felt tremendous fear or tremendous wanting, and or tremendous aversion. These are all strong emotions that, when they're taken kind of peaked in some level, that they have very identifiable suffering. And one of our truths here is that yes, suffering exists, but we can also minimize or many times just eliminate the suffering simply because we have the wherewithal not to get lost in the emotional reactions that kind of catch us. So again, I just have these two things, that I wanted to talk about, and I'll get to clarity because I think that's what I'm trying to talk about. But I'm using, first of all, the body, and that ease is the precursor to awareness and awakening. And I think, the other piece is this spaciousness, which is, it's a trained thing. Usually we're focusing on things that we want or we like or dislike. And focusing is good because we use that as a means of focusing. Let's just use the example of the breath as a means of really calming the whole system down. And if it gets calmed down enough, then there can be some wisdom that arises, or some heart. One or the other will happen, But if you're kind of caught in this, it's stress indulgent kind of cultural problem out there. That there will just be, it's just, if I can say it, it's just a repetition, and we repeat the complexity of our truth of getting lost, and then we lose our equilibrium. They talk about this as the middle way, and it's somewhere between those between the extremes, and that we find this middle way through the training of the mind and the the I think that you could say the discipline of finding ease, and the spaciousness, which when there's no fear and there's ease and there's a sense of clarity of mind, middle way, then the heart opens, and so there's this great space for a heart to know its way, you know. So one of the things was I was in Thailand, and I went down the beach first just to swim so I could get my body together, and that part's good. And I did had one of these PET scans, where they shoot you up with some radioactivity stuff, and they do like an MRI on you. And I was clear, which is really great. I was thrilled to get that behind me. Hopefully, stays that way. But I went up to Chiang Mai, and after after going swimming for a while, because I really needed that for my body. And I always go to there's a Chetty Lawang. It's like it's ancient. It's like, I don't know, 12th century or something. And it's a huge, if you know what the word stupa is, or Chetty. And it's kind of the center of the old town of Chiang Mai. And the first really temple you come to is to Ajahn Mun, the the teacher of Ajahn Chah, and the disciple of Ajahn Sao. And this is just such a classic piece. In your investigation of the world, never allow the mind to desert the body. Let me read that again. In your investigation of the world, never allow the mind to desert the body. Examine its nature. See the elements that comprise it. See the impermanence, the suffering, the selflessness of the body while sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. When its true nature is seen fully and lucidly by the heart, the wonders of the world will become clear. In this way, the purity of the mind can shine forth, timeless and delivered. In this way, the purity of the mind can shine forth, timeless and delivered. Never let the mind desert the body. Pretty simple instructions. Next to this temple where of Ajahn Mun, and they have this, I don't know what they make it out of, maybe out of rubber or plastic or something, but it is so lifelike, and you kind of go, ooh. And it's inside of a kind of glass box, and but it's a very good rendering. And then the temple next door is Mahabua, who was he was the disciple, like Ajahn Chah, of Ajahn Mun, but he was very literary, and so he wrote the kind of the life of Ajahn Mun, which was really it's interesting in the Thai tradition there. It's mystical, you know. They talk about the devas and the unseen beings that come and assist and are there. And sometimes I don't think that's such a bad thing, because I'm not saying science is great, I mean qualifies things. But there's also more to what's here. And so sometimes we have to stretch the mind a little to not be so, I know the word came didactic, but it's really that we're always going and um, we're not leaving the space for the unknown to appear. And there's a big thing about that because culturally, and I'll say the Pasna community that's the West has kind of been hooked into is very much scientific and especially the mindfulness movement and psychological. And when I'm in Asia, one of the things I know that they don't, they're kind of weird in that way that there is more mysticism in their kind of religious beliefs and means than we have inherited here. So I speak for them. I go there a lot, and I can't say it's always okay because again, there is certainly their gift giving is Donna is phenomenal. But the problem with it is when you have kind of the mystical seeing into the wonders. There's another side to that, and that's the kind of the, if I can say, Thais love horror movies, if that gives you any indication, so it also is that mind also has the basis for fear, and so that's why I take one side of it. I kind of let the rest go, but there's a lot of superstition there, and it's okay as far as I'm concerned, you know. So this is from Ajahn Chah. The visitors to your chair consists of images, plans, memories, dreams, thoughts, emotional, and many others. Once you acknowledge their presence, they will be happy to leave. However, you have to be sure to notice them, not to let them take over the conversation. How will you sit silently with these visitors? Do you watch them come and go, or do you try to entertain them? And I think this is actually, I think, one of the brilliant pieces of Ajahn Chah is where he designates the practice. In the poem I wrote, the one seat, and it's really that ability to not wander off. And, that's a discipline. That's something that you have to again and again practice to not get lost, particularly, I think, in the Western vernacular here with thinking and imagining and planning. It's amazing how you could just do that, and you would never wake up. You would simply, they call it the wheel of samsara. You just keep turning that wheel over and over again and recreating it over and over again. And the whole idea of this practice is get off the wheel. You get off the wheel means that you have to exert yourself and become awake and aware to what your, can I say, your images, plans, memories, dreams, thoughts, emotions, and many other things um, keep you somehow churning in that same world. And the ideas here is that somehow, and I don't know, it's like I'm just kind of talking here, but is there some way of keeping it simple? And when they, he encouraged people to kind of take the one seat. Yes, there was metaphorically speaking, but it also was the fact that it goes back to Ajahn Mun, and don't let the mind leave the body. Uh, Keep it, here, whether it's just following your breath, or it's just being with the sensations, or you're not fantasizing about what's present here. And more you become present, and more you kind of note from moment to moment, there is a tremendous amount of about ease that comes. And there is you can say the clarity comes from seeing the different, what you can say, anicca, and see impermanence in its direct form, that things are constantly changing. The mind is always jumping from object to object, but there's something that behind it that is always there, that is something that always knows what's going on, but it gets fooled and caught by the changing phenomena of whether it's sight, smell, taste, memory, dreams, plans, images, thoughts, emotions. All of it is pulling one away from just staying right here. Um, I'm trying to think of what more I want to add here. If you have a question, I don't know if we can pull this off, but I would love. It's one thing to sit here and just kind of babble away, but if you have a question, I would love to explore it with you and with the sangha here. And I mean, I don't have more that I plan to say, so. You have to raise your hand though, and there's Jen. I see her hand up.
Hi, John. Thank you for coming back. I was taking some notes and I noticed that you said you used the phrase both bare attention, and then you used the phrase bare experience. And I just wonder if you could sort of marry those two, or just speak about the relationship a little more. I just feel like I need a little more detail.
Well, bare attention.
Uh-huh.
Exactly what it says is that you simply you're not manufacturing anything. So there is there is, say, a simple, a wonderful taste. You have beautiful taste, and what can happen is there's a pretty simple. You go, oh, I want more of that, or if some reason it doesn't taste the way you would like it, then you reject it. And bare attention is just, maybe noting you dislike it, it's unpleasant, and maybe it's pleasant, but you don't do anything with it. It's just bare. It's bare attention, and it is probably the one of the more used phrases in the practice, because it is actually the the means the means towards awakening, is that we use bare attention with all of our experience. And the thing is that, because of our reactions to things, those are extra, you know. And from the point of view uh, of um, of practice, and there's also what was the other bear? What did I say? Bear awareness,
Attention and experience.
experience, bear experience. Well, bear experience and bear awareness. One is the physical experience of something, and the other is the knowing of it. And really, we're more interested in the knowing of it, because that's where choice is. And all this practice is based on, on intelligence and our capacity for wisdom, and that wisdom then can be married to heart. But there has to be the wisdom there. If there's just heart, that doesn't work. If there's just wisdom, that doesn't work. They really have to be, complementary in these kinds of disciplines. So
Beautiful. Thank you.
you're welcome. Anybody else?
Go ahead, Cindy. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, John. This is a great talk. I really appreciate it. I thought I would share just a little experience I had this morning, which is your night, where I realized that the way I had been thinking, there was a question that was posed, and I realized the way that I had been thinking for some time now, maybe a few years, was incorrect. And I don't know what the correct way of thinking is yet, but it really caused me distress thinking about, spending a few years thinking in this wrong way. And so these really negative emotions came up to the point of a bit of despair, thinking, oh, why am I spending all this time, when actually I've been thinking in the wrong way? And then trying to back off of that and relax and give it some space. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit in this context where I wasn't only, I just got caught in the reaction and the emotion because I had invested so much time and energy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because we are emotional creatures, and we are creatures that are attached to our views and our opinions and our relations. And so then we set ourselves up to suffer because of those maybe false or rigid views that may have seemed logical at one time, but are not helpful at this stage of our life. And so, yeah, it's a interesting dilemma, isn't it? And but once we start to see, this is the beauty of Dharma, is once we start to see the truth in our experience, then there's kind of the, oh, I can change. And even though I held that for so long, it doesn't have to be who I am now. And that is a great blessing. So I'm glad to hear that you've found a respite for some of your what misunderstanding.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Laura, did you have a question earlier? Somebody's hand was up. Who was it? Molly?
Yeah.
We can't hear you very well.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, that was my lame headphones. So I just really liked how you were talking about how we go between stress and indulgence. The way that you phrased that was a new and unique way of like looking at that balance and how we sway from like one side to the other side and how it can happen to us, but it can also be initiated by us. So I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Well, it's a big deal, you know. Uh, uh, a lot of times we have a culture that plays that game, stress and indulgence, and they have many means of doing so, uh, and um, and usually not too much goodness comes out of that. You know, one of the beauties here is that when a person is, they use the word equanimous, and that means you're not getting lost in indulgence, you're not getting lost in stress, but kind of sitting in the center of that. Then there is a kindness, generosity, heart opening that is more who we are, you know. That other kind of paying back and forth between stress and indulgence, um, you know, it's, we believe that there'll be happiness there, but usually it just is another form of suffering, and you know, sometimes covered by well, particularly in the indulgences, that somehow it'll be okay, you know, but usually doesn't work, you know, or it works for a short time, and then it's back to stress. So let's see, I want to do a metta to close. And first, I want to thank you for showing up. I'm back in the seat here. Next week, I will be teaching from the center, which is, I think, better for me. This is a little more, this is more sterile, but you know, it's what we got, and I'm happy that we can do this. What else? I think that's all. I have to turn it over to Jen, but first I'm going to do a metta. Is that okay? And then who's doing the announcements? Okay, great. So just take a moment to just feel into your body. And bring some kindness and some ease. And just know that your basic goodness, that heart, through all your experiences, has ultimately never been harmed. And so that basic goodness is what we rely on. And I have the phrases I use, which you may have your phrases. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. And then just attending to the heart. What's wonderful about it is really awakening and heart are not so separate. One is more mind and the other is heart, and that ultimately they are not different. And so we can work with the mind and the body, and we can also work with the heart. It has to always be a kind of a balance of mind and heart and body, and our ability to rest in that. And when we have that, it is a kind of simplicity of being. We can extend it beyond the confines of ourselves to our families, our friends. And in this case, the Sangha that are in different places and from areas, and that we acknowledge that we have the capacity to support each other for our own awakening and ability to release stress and extend this loving kindness out to beings everywhere. And so family, friends, Sangha, and then on out, so that we are holding all beings, ultimately, all beings, in this sense of non-separateness, and that there is this kindness that can be generated towards beings. Again, if there's any merit or power that's created through our coming together, that it is ultimately for the benefit of beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere be happy.